Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 54 of the Corner Blue. I'm Hugo Alvarado, and I'm here with Andres Rico. And finally, we managed to get together. World Cup episode.
Special part two, because I did
Part
the
two.
other one by myself.
That's correct. Andres went ahead and did one by himself. I couldn't make the time. Sorry, guys. But here we are, and we're glad to be back. Talk about La Selecta. I mean, this is about La Selecta after all, but there's a World Cup going on, so we're going to talk about the World Cup as well. We're going to talk about the quarterfinals. Seems like did Portugal lose to Argentina today? Or, I mean, I've been hearing a lot about Argentina this, Argentina that. I thought they played Morocco, but anyways, how are you doing, Andres?
Good. Well, glad to see you back. It's been a bit. Thanks to everybody for putting up with the solo version. I hope you guys were able to enjoy some of the trivia facts on, those polemic moments that occurred due to refereeing. And here we are with the usual format where, we're bouncing ideas and opinions back and forth. But first of all, what a World Cup, ladies and gentlemen. I've been talking about it with a lot of my friends, everyone that's been watching it, family members. And I think one thing that across the board, most of my friends and family are saying is how memorable this World Cup has been. Because I try and think about 2018 and it's all a blur. Like there isn't a moment that sticks out other than, let's say, Pavar's line drive against Argentina when they played them in I don't even know what round, quarters or something like that. In any case, this World Cup's just been full of upsets, full of, dramatic games, teams going at it, slugfest. There were a couple sleepers in the first round, but I'd say overall, I'm pretty content with the performances by the teams, especially in the elimination rounds. And it's just getting even more and more exciting. How are you liking it? Or have you been able to balance watching it, work, kids? How's that gone for you? Sleep?
I'm trying to juggle everything as much as I can. I've been trying to watch. I mean, in the group stage, I watched at least 2 games, per day. And if not, I will record some of them or watch the highlights. It's been a really good World Cup. Especially like you said, the knockout stage. That's when things get very interesting. I always love seeing surprises. So I always thought an African team had the potential of being the surprise in a World Cup. However, I was leaning more towards the teams in the center west of the African continent, Senegal, Ghana, Ivory Coast. I mean, of course, they didn't go to this World Cup, but seems like Northern Africa is the African team, the big surprise in this World Cup.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that theme of the dual nationals or the multinationals on the Moroccan squad. If you look it up, it's been on social media. They made a media piece of it on broadcasts of how, how many players have been born abroad that are representing Morocco. And it's funny how I think it's like 16, like most of their squad is of their diaspora, and it's just a reflection of the times. Most of our listeners would agree with that statement that the globalization aspect of football, of soccer is here to stay. And it is kind of cool to see a team conformed of children of the diaspora, repping their flag, repping their colors, repping their culture, their parents' country, and getting to that stage of the World Cup. It's exciting. I think the standouts to me have been, obviously Morocco, Japan. I really liked how Japan played. Poland, I'm surprised they got that far. Let's see, of the South Korea, I was surprised they got that far, but Switzerland, I was like the the killjoy that has been working at it for a while now. They've consistently been getting into the World Cup and pulling upsets. Granted, not getting too far, but this generation that's about to age out of Shaka and Shaqiri, these guys have been balling for a while. So it was cool to see them get a couple good results, make it to the knockout round, and quietly, do their thing. Unfortunately, I feel like they got worn out against Serbia. So by the time they played Portugal, they got wrecked on the pitch. But it's been good to see those underdogs. I always enjoy the underdogs. I think we need a new champion. We need new blood, someone that hasn't won it before. And so at this point, I'm honestly kind of rooting for Croatia to get it. Morocco, obviously, for sentimental reasons. Yeah. Who wouldn't want to see Messi pick up the trophy at the end? But for my personal taste, I think as a team overall, style wise, this Argentina team is lacking, or at least in my opinion, to my taste. I'm not enjoying, their style of play. You can see that the dynamic of the group, they go all out for each other, which is admirable. But, I guess being spoiled and having seen better Argentinian teams in the past, it's kind of always like anticlimactic to see a player like Messi surrounded by the squad that he's in. But we'll see how far they get. So yeah, for sentimental reasons, why not Messi holding the cup at the end? That wouldn't ruin my day. But the French, that'd be different. I hope they don't win. I can't lie. But after their game today, I think they're going to go back to back. It's, obviously I like Croatia, kind of want it. We'll see how they do. At this point, the only team that I'm kind of like, please don't win is France. How about you?
Yeah, I was just going back a little bit. I really like Japan. I like how Japan played. I hope Japan had at least gone to the quarterfinals. So unfortunately they didn't make it. South Korea, I think they keep getting better. I mean, they keep improving. What really amazes me of the Asian teams, I saw South Korea against what was this? Was this Senegal? It was in the group stage. They played against an African team. I can't remember right now, but I was amazed by their ability to play long balls, and literally they won every long ball and every second ball against the African teams.
It was Ghana.
It was Ghana. Yes, it was. It was. I mean, they had Ghana. I mean, I thought it was just a matter of time for them to tie the match. Unfortunately, they couldn't. But it's always fun to watch the Asian teams because their style, their personalities are so different than what we're used to seeing, and even physically. I mean, they're different. They're built differently than the South Americans or the Europeans. So I just think it's always fun to watch the Asian teams. I wish again Japan or South Korea had advanced more. Yeah, Switzerland was probably, along with Germany, the disappointments of the World Cup. I think I'm enjoying the World Cup. Today I kind of wanted England to go through. Not so much because I mean I do have family, or my wife's family lives there, and I've been there, and I like the country.
You have ties to
Yeah,
the Lankas.
I have some ties to the to England, but especially I just think for football, for soccer, however we want to call it, we know the modern soccer football was invented in England, and the sport is so important. It's such a big part of the British culture. I just think it'll be good for the sport, for a team like England to, I mean, now it's too late, right? But I think it would have been a good thing for them to qualify to go through, maybe play the final or win it, So I was kind of rooting for them, nothing against France. I personally, again, for Messi, I would like Argentina to win the World Cup. I think that Croatia and Argentina have very similar styles. I think it's going to be a very good semifinal. It's going to be the Messi against the Croatian Messi playing against each other. And I think Argentina is going to go through. I agree with you. I mean, you watch the group stage Argentina and you're like, you just kind of wish, right? Like the 94 Argentina, which they make it that far, but it was full of, talented players. I mean, they're always full of talented players, right? From the best leagues in the world.
But I feel like this team's the most low key. It's like Messi and, 22 other guys,
Yeah.
No offense to
Yes.
them.
No, that's true. I agree that in the group stage, I think they were not looking that sharp. However, I must say, in yesterday's match, I thought, I mean, unfortunately, they almost lost it towards the end. But as a team, and also Messi played an incredible match. But I think as a team, they looked the best I've seen against the Netherlands, at least for 80 minutes of the game. So I think they have a lot of momentum going, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go to the final. On the other side, France against Morocco. I mean, Morocco is just impressive. I think they're choosing to play the defensive style that they're playing, and but when they're down, they know how to get back. It's like they're full of talented players, and yeah. So I don't
One
know. I
thing,
like to.
one thing I've noticed is that like if you look at the fan base when a team is down or facing, elimination, it's always interesting when they start doing shots of the fans, and it's always the ones that look like they've lost their composure, completely defeated. You're like, oh, okay, that's how their culture works. The
Yeah,
team's gonna lose.
yeah,
Like with Ecuador had such a great squad. And for that brief moment when they were through, the fans were elated. But once there was that moment of adversity, all of them just shut down. I was like, that's not good. And, that's happened subsequently with basically every fan base that I've seen is the ones that that are alentando and hyped up on their team. You can tell that the squad, the 11 feed off of that. And then it just tells you kind of the mentality of the team itself too. And, yeah, that's been interesting to see is how, how the fan bases react. And that kind of gives you an inkling to maybe the psyche and, up to a point of the team, trying to get that result. And, you look at the four fan bases, Morocco, look at just all the support they've gotten throughout the Arab world, just due to the importance of the history that they're making. France, of course. France has a strong fan base. They're the current reigning champs, and they've gotten a lot of support. Croatia's had that support throughout the tournament, and then not to speak of the Argentinos, like they're all about the Scaloneta, and they've ridden that wave of energy to this point. But like you said, like with the semis coming up, these are great matchups in my opinion. And I don't think France is going to have it that easy. I mean, maybe on paper you could consider it, but if you see, Morocco's tactics, their strengths, their speed, you could say that they have enough speed to counter, your Dembélés or Mbappé's, or set up traps and go on the counter, go on the counter attacks against France. Because in my opinion, someone like Dembélé, even though he's really fast, he's good on the wing. he can be a liability because he runs out of ideas. He runs out of gas after he starts running a lot, and he doesn't like to give the ball up too much. Or if he does, we've seen it at Barcelona where he just does these weird crosses that don't end up anywhere. So I think there, there's a weak link that they might be able to exploit, like force them to give it to Dembele, and see what happens. But yeah, great World Cup so far. I talked about the refereeing the last episode but I want to talk more about just the tweaks, like I feel like the Argentina Netherlands match was a complete opposite of the Croatia Brazil match. The Croatia Brazil match was one of your more old school vintage refereeing where the referee wasn't trying to be the protagonist. The number of cards wasn't high. The flow of the game was, pretty continuous. And at the end, the amount of extra time given was more within the average amount of every single tournament up until this World Cup before they started this goofy business of adding 15 minutes of extra time, which completely changes things. That's a point I'd like to make is just because Pierluigi Collina justified all these reasons for adding the amount of time to the end of the game, this aggregate time, it's counterproductive, I feel, and it takes away from the game. And teams are having to catch up with these changes in terms of when to make the subs, because why are you going to speculate and wait till after the 90th minute to throw someone in if you don't know how much extra time is? So then you have all this dead time, 10, 15 minutes of players that are, their legs are gone. But in any case, getting back to the original point, Croatia, Brazil, I felt like the referee was, I can't even remember his name. That's how good he was. That's a sign when you don't know their name. But the Netherlands Argentina match, that's where you saw more of the new FIFA rules, the extra time, the soft PKs, the soft contact that's called. And I was watching videos from like 2006 of the Brazil team back then when they played France, and how they give yellows back then for simulating. Now we have the VAR. They can totally check to see if the player's bullshitting, and there's no yellows. So there's been so much flopping, so much soft contact, so many polemic PKs. I don't know. That's the one aspect of the VAR and the extra time that just kind of drives me nuts. But I've digressed. We have to look forward to these semis. And so, Ugo, officially, who do you have as the champ for now?
Argentina. Final is going to be Argentina against Morocco. And Argentina is going to win.
I'm thinking it's going to be Croatia, France. Even though I like Argentina to go all the way through, my gut's telling me Croatia, man for man, is a little bit stronger, a little more organized. Maybe it doesn't have the colmillo or the amor propio or the vivianadas that, the Argentinos have. But I think it's a more structurally sound squad. So I kind of think they're going to go through unless they're completely worn out from playing Brazil. And then France, Morocco, I think it's going to be Croatia, France. And I don't want it to happen, but I think France will win.
No, I take it back a little bit. I think it's going to be Argentina, France, but I would like to see Morocco there because of what they've done so far. And honestly, I do think they have a squad strong enough to beat France. But France so far has been the most consistent team in the World Cup. They've been playing like a champion.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
it's not going to be easy, but we saw today. I mean, England could have tied that match. Had Harry Kane not missed that PK, so
La Salle.
So you're looking at, the World Cup champion, right? The current champions playing against a team like England, who they're always strong, but they haven't won anything in a long time.
They're cursed.
yeah, so they haven't won anything in so long. However, they totally went head to head against France today, and they could have tied the match, and who knows, win the match. So why am I saying that? I do think that France is the best team in the World Cup. I think that, when it comes to like the Europeans, they're very, very close, and Morocco. I mean, most of the players are European-based players born in European countries. Uh, One born in Canada. I think they have the talent. I think they have the talent. I think they have the momentum going to. Hey, they have nothing to lose. They made it to the semifinal, the first African team to make it to the semifinal. They don't carry that weight that Brazil carries, that Argentina carries, that England carries, where they have. I mean, Brazil hasn't won anything in 20 years.
Weight/arrogance, I would say, very politely.
Yeah, I mean,
Of all the former champions.
Yes, you can say that. I mean, it's true, but to me, it's like I'm focusing more on when was the last time they won something. It's like Uruguay, they're World Cup world champion, but when was the last time they won a World Cup? So the same. Brazil
1950.
hasn't. I mean, I wasn't even born. So what I'm saying is that for Morocco is more about, they have so much more to gain than to lose. I mean, if for Argentina, if you think about Argentina and Messi, I mean, like what happened to Cristiano today, that this is possibly your last dance, right? The final dance. And for Messi, if he wins a World Cup, he's gonna be put up there near Maradona.
Yeah,
And
beyond the marketing, beyond like, the modern era of football, he'll be in what they call the annals,
yeah,
like straight up Hall of Fame status, legend status.
right. But for Argentina, I mean, you might call it arrogance. They have won World Cups. They are always going into a World Cup. There's always a large percentage of non-Argentinians who think that Argentina is always a contender to win the tournament. So I feel that they always carry that weight and that responsibility. Morocco does not. So to me, it's like they have so much to win and so little to lose, because they are, in the eyes of their fans, they're already champions. They're, what they've done, it's big. They
Oh
have
yeah,
gained
the
the
hype
respect of
is real for Morocco.
yeah. So,
I think the ideal final would be, Argentina, France. But I feel like finals are always the game where, teams are more conservative since everything is on the line. Typically your quarters, your semis are where you see the slugfest, where teams go all out. But then, yeah, the final, you never know if it can, be a stalemate, but both teams tend to be more conservative in the final. So we'll see where it goes. We're almost there. It's been an exciting cup, definitely. I'm glad we're not doing the 4 days anymore. Though it was fun in its own way, just a throwback to Korea, Japan. And now, we got 2 games left at 11 a.m. That's definitely doable. And hopefully I don't have to work at that time, or I can find a way to schedule around that. But now we'll move forward. Now that the World Cup is almost over, CONCACAF has said goodbye to the tournament. How does this affect us moving forward? How does this affect La Selecta moving forward now that you have Canada, Mexico, and the US not being involved in qualifiers? You have the Gold Cup coming up next year. And then on top of that, most recently, Ecuador dropped out of hosting the next Copa America. So there's been hints at the US hosting this tournament as a way of keeping the U.S. national team active and competing at a high level to make up for not having to be, burdened or bothered to even qualify for the next World Cup. So far, at least the reports that I've seen, it's the US hosting. Canada is negotiating to be involved directly as an invitee to that tournament, plus an additional 3 to 4 CONCACAF teams, if I'm not mistaken. So there's room for Mexico, obviously, to be in it since they're in the same boat as the two previously mentioned countries, which leaves, room for a couple more invitees from the area, kind of like a Copa Centenario situation where you have the main countries from CONCACAF in the tournament and then a couple outliers. And this is a situation where you'd hope La Selecta, due to the amount of diaspora, the amount of the size of the Salvadoran community in the U.S., that at least from a marketing standpoint, they would consider inviting El Salvador. Now, let's say due to our performance in the octagonal, we'll see, considering that there were teams that performed better than El Salvador that could easily fill those 2-3 spots. Hugo, what do you think might happen or become of this?
Well, I think in terms of helping, it always helps. I mean, it would be a great experience for El Salvador because we rarely get to compete against teams of that level. And if we're really looking at being a contender for the next World Cup, just look at the level now. I mean, if we look at the level in the group stage, like you're really right. You look at the teams, even the teams who didn't perform well. And I mean, Mexico didn't go out of the group stage, and they are one of the strongest in the area. We really have to step it up to be able to go to that World Cup. It doesn't matter if there's going to be 48 teams. We really need to step it up. And obviously participating in a team like in a tournament like Copa America, where, you're going to be playing against all those South American teams who currently play the World Cup. It's going to help you to, test yourself at that level. And because the World Cup is going to be like that more and more. So I definitely think that it will help El Salvador. Hopefully we can get in there if it does happen. I think that it should be done based on whatever the ranking is after the Nations League. And I think that should be considered. I mean, from a marketing perspective, probably, having El Salvador will make more money than inviting, I don't know, Jamaica. I mean, nothing against Jamaica. I'm just throwing the name out there. And I think Jamaica has played Copa America before.
They play the Centenario, yeah. I saw them play Uruguay at Levi's.
Yeah.
Hashtag non-sponsor.
So yes, the answer is yes. Playing a tournament like Copa America would definitely help our team, especially if we already have a core base of players that are going to be competing in the qualifiers. Having that experience should really help.
Definitely. All right, so I'm looking up the CONCACAF rankings currently. I'll edit this out. All right, so looking at the CONCACAF ranking index right now, pole position is for Mexico. Let's see. Followed by the United States, then Costa Rica, Canada 4th, Panama is 5th, Jamaica is 6th, Haiti 7th, Honduras is 8th, Guatemala is 9th, and El Salvador is 10th, followed by Martinique. 12th is Trinidad and Tobago, 13th is Curacao, and the list goes on. So
yeah, so here are some of the things that don't make sense, right? Haiti being on top of El Salvador. It's just
I think that's where we can kind of lead into or allude to the effects, even though it's not abysmal, but it felt like it was to a lot of people. But the loss against Nicaragua, that doesn't necessarily help ranking wise when you lose to a lower ranked team. Obviously, there's been an aftermath to that whole situation, kind of covered up by the World Cup. Nicaragua made history by beating us for the first time. Something that I think was a couple years in the making. It seems that they've kind of tried to work on their program. They got a friendly match against Iran recently. Their teams in the CONCACAF league have gotten a couple results in El Salvador, which was historic to them. I remember I was watching FAS versus Managua, and when they eliminated FAS, they were celebrating, as if they had won a tournament or qualified to something huge, which is something to admire, that, they're working on things and leveling up. And unfortunately, that's where we've gotten stuck, is we're not gaining any traction or ground, especially in the current state of the federation, the unknown, all these variables that are still left open in the air that haven't been resolved yet. And we're getting closer to March and playing the US, that is coming off of a decent performance in the World Cup. So yes, if you dissect things right now, the ranking, hopefully that's something that can improve by the time the organizers of the Copa America figure out who's going to go. It's not looking too great in terms of ranking wise. So far, I haven't heard anything or seen any reports of any matches to happen before the match with the US. Have you heard anything, Ugo?
I have not, no.
So yeah,
but there's
that's
definitely January should be, I don't think they're FIFA windows, but if anything could be organized, will be then to get ready for March. I mean, losing against Nicaragua didn't help, but at the same time, I feel like if we look historically at the games that we played in Managua, even with our A squad, it's not like we've gone there and just slaughter them. I mean, just look at the score. So there always been very close matches against Nicaragua in Managua, and the reality, and this is no excuse, I do think that we're better than Nicaragua with our A squad. I really strongly believe that, and not putting Nicaragua down in any way. I went to watch them play against Guatemala, and Nicaragua is doing very, very interesting things. I mean, seriously, I'm not saying they're a contender for the next World Cup, but they're definitely moving in the right direction. They're if they continue with the Chilean coach that they have, they're interesting. I mean, I was there at field level watching that game, and honestly, for large portions of the game, they play better than Guatemala. Guatemala did not deserve to win that game, and they know it. They have
a couple of good players in the middle. I think it's number 17,
the big
and
one.
Then they're 10. And the way that those two play off of each other reminded me of how Cheyo and Pega were playing off of each other during the early stages of the first De Los Cobos stint, where there was nothing else. There was very limited, attack or ability to attack on that squad during those first days. But when he put Cheyo and Pega, the stuff that they would create together, how they played off, was just, it was fun to watch. But up to that point, him and Cheyo were like, these two creative minds in the midfield doing things that these players from Nicaragua were doing, where they just jugaban de memoria, they absorbed the ball and could do a lot with little. And so props to Nicaragua for the game that they played. I feel like our team just looked on its heels. It looked, kind of confused. There were a lot of debuts again, a lot of rotations. In my opinion, kind of the repetitive story of as of late, especially with the friendly matches. It's something we also saw in the octagonal where having a consistent 11 was very hard for the coaching staff to field due to various reasons. I think, a game like this, a friendly match like this, is the ideal moment to try something out, right? So you saw Rudy Clavel get his first start at the right back position. You saw who else? There are a whole bunch of new guys. I forget their names. But in lieu of, the consequences of suspensions that occurred after the game in Peru, which is a whole other subject. You could sense that there was lack of communication, comfort, not being able to play the memoria, on the field. And the Nicaraguans, as we saw, they have more cohesiveness because they've been playing together. So I think they were at home, they have that cohesiveness, and you could see that come through, especially. And again, like you said, it's no disrespect to Nicaragua at all, but one tendency for El Salvador is that it accommodates to its rival. So if they're playing a better team, for the most part, they rise to the occasion, even though the results may not necessarily reflect that. But there's that tendency of when we play Caribbean teams or some of the smaller countries in CONCACAF that instead of holding the level that they do against the bigger teams, they kind of, play down. I know that sounds negative, but it's like se acomodan en rival, which I feel is a little more neutral. Mario Gonzalez, got hit and injured within the first minute of the game. And I think that kind of affected things as well. We had a couple of those plays of trying to play out the back that did not go well, but fortunately it didn't turn into goals. But I think in general, it was just one of those sparrings that count towards the rankings and it affects things. And, coming off of the loss to Peru and now Nicaragua, it's not the ideal way of closing out the year, especially in the midst of, the federation still being in the process of being created. So closing out 2022 isn't necessarily, in a bright spot or an uplifting spot for La Selecta, but looking towards next year, will they be able to rise to the occasion of starting that process towards 2026 officially? The last chance to kind of fine tune things seems like it'll be against the US in March. Now we have to see,
hopefully there's something prior to that.
Yeah. And logistically, it'll be up to this temporary commission to come through and get the matches in preparation, needed to go into March. And then on top of that, Gold Cup. We've seen a need for adapting tactics. We've seen even tweaks in the coaching staff and some articles that came out that were pretty negative of, insider stuff becoming public. I just hope for the coaching staff that moving forward, they're able to deal, and the federation itself, that they're able to deal with some of the distractions, or at least be able to handle things internally in a better way, so that there's fewer distractions for them having to deal with the media, but also the support of the fans. It's in their own interest to have the support of the fans. And I feel lately, from a PR standpoint, the Normalizadora hasn't handled things ideally in terms of what happened versus after the game versus Peru, and also just some of the publications, some of the articles that have been coming out of coaching staff's opinions and stuff like that. So Yeah, if you take a litmus test of things right now for the national team, there's just too many unknowns. And unfortunately, that's not what this program needs heading into the concept of 2026. The World Cup is almost over now. We've seen that CONCACAF is, it's not up to par per se, at least in this tournament with the bigger, better teams in the world. You saw the US do a decent job of getting into the knockout rounds, but other than that, their youth was on display, and also questions in terms of tactics. It seemed like there was some drama internally with some players being left out of the starting 11 that had been consistent throughout the qualifying stage and Gold Cup and matchups against Mexico. I'm referring to Gio Reyna. That was pretty interesting that he saw limited action. Mexico, you're seeing a generational turnaround where they have to fix their program too, because they did not wake up until that third game, but it was too late. Canada started out with a nice match, but quickly shriveled and died. I think at least on paper from the outside, it seems that once they started talking about Croatia in an inappropriate manner, it kind of fueled Croatia, and that kind of doomed their campaign. And then the Ticos were a surprise in the sense that they got wrecked 7-0. I know a lot of us were crossing our fingers that somehow they were going to take 3 more and break the record for the biggest goal difference. I was hoping for at least 11 or 12 so we can leave the concept of 10 away. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but granted, credit to them. They turn it around and knock out Germany. So
and for a few minutes they were also knocking out Spain.
Oh, and that was another fan base that I was like, okay, once you saw them go down and how defeated the fans were, I was like, nah, lo van a eliminar. Like, all they needed was a goal, and you just saw the defeat. I was like, man, I kind of was surprised that the Ticos, were so deflated after that goal. But I think they had a decent campaign. It's an end of an era for many of their players, so they're going to have to turn around and rebuild. So rebuilding is kind of a theme for CONCACAF, except for the US, because I feel like they've already started that process. Now they have a World Cup under their belts, so I think they have the head start. Canada, it'll be curious to see who stays, who goes, if they keep the coach, if they're able to keep that consistency. It's still a very young program that has a lot to prove. And I think that kind of came across during this World Cup. Like, even that big distraction of Nike not supplying them with the new jersey, like how anticlimactic is that, just from a psychological standpoint as a player, like, yes, it seems something superficial, but I feel just something just like that is a type of stuff that's affected, La Selecta when it participated in World Cups, where the directivos were stealing the home jerseys and sending them out with the white ones, just things like that just shows that, yes, they fielded a good squad. They had a good run in the octagonal, but at an organizational level, they're still very young. They're still building their program to be at a professional level in comparison to the US and Mexico. So we'll see if they're able to ride this recent wave of success. Hopefully they don't have to deal with ranking systems, or they don't have to deal with ranking systems and qualifying anymore. So that's out of the way for them. But yes, I feel like El Salvador, we've been talking about 2026 for the last couple of years, but seeing how teams like Nicaragua are doing, Curacao, Panama, we'll see. It'll be an interesting ride. We're starting off on the left foot.
It's what we've been repeating over and over. It's not
Mhm.
going to be a given just because there's 48 teams.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of work to be done. I don't take the Nicaragua game as a good measurement of where we are. We literally had a B/C squad for that game, and again, some might think it's an excuse, but it's a reality. Just look at the players who played, and I'm pro uh, debuting new players. I thought that was the whole purpose of that game, so fine.
Mhm.
But of course, but the fan who doesn't like the current coaching staff, they're gonna take that, and that serves as fuel for them, right? We reached the bottom. Fire the coach. The coach needs to go. They don't look at the circumstances. In fact, they don't even look at the circumstances of how that game came about.
Yeah.
That's another story.
Yeah.
But I remember the coaching staff had a different agenda, different plan that was cut short for that game. It was all last minute. All of that affects everything. I mean, and you have to put a squad with new players together. I mean, again, they might sound like excuses. Yes, it was a hard defeat, but I don't think that game it's the reality of where we stand now. Of course, let's keep in mind, unfortunately, we finished the qualifiers, and the coaching staff, Hugo Perez and his staff, he has to start rebuilding for 2026, which means that there are some of those experienced players that play the current qualifier who are not going to be there just as a result of the generational change. So there's going to be some of that too. And unfortunately, yes, losing against Nicaragua with their BC squad with some U20 players in there, with a few under 20 players there in that squad, doesn't help. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that the staff can get the support they need. I would love to see at least a camp before playing the U.S. But a friendly game will help the team at least to, I don't know, hopefully release that trauma of losing to Nicaragua, right? Before playing an important match against the United States.
Yeah, I think the most basic concept that needs to be followed through is cohesion, chemistry, consistency, keeping that base, trying to limit the distractions, because that's what affected the octagonal, was just the outside bullshit, the usual stuff. So I feel like the time is running out on this regulating commission. The World Cup's kind of, about to be over within a week, and some answers are going to be needed to be given, because it's time to go to work. Obviously, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes right now. There's been little to no information coming out in terms of what stages they're in of hiring a sporting director, what changes are going to be done, what are the statutes, when what are the what's the time frame in terms of getting all the bylaws corrected and standardized, and what the time frame is for the hirings that are necessary. I know that the youth teams are starting up again. There's been tryouts in the US for girls youth teams. So I think hopefully within the next couple, once Christmas is over, we're starting to get news of what's on the horizon, because just knowing that we have the US in March, just knowing that we have Gold Cup is extremely limited, and up to a point concerning, in the sense that from the outside, at least in my point of view, there seems to be a lack of organization even within this cleanup period. So time will only tell, obviously, what comes of this, and hopefully by the next time we record, it's to talk about either a camp or a friendly match coming up before going head to head with the US in March. The final thing that we wanted to talk about very briefly is about Grant Wall. I think as, Salvadoran American, podcasters, albeit amateur, but as, as people that create content within the US about the sport, most of us have followed his career throughout the past years. If you're into soccer in the US, in my opinion, he's one of the very few journalists, soccer journalists that you can name within the country, because he stood out due to the quality of his articles, the content he produced. So it is a very tragic loss to see someone like that go so young. It's incredible that, the circumstances and that it was covering the World Cup. So yeah, condolences to his family. Well, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, condolences to his wife and family. And yes, it's been a tragic loss, I think, for the soccer community in the United States. I had seen him for years and read some of his articles. And I think I started following him a little more when he was fired during the pandemic, I think from Sports Illustrated. And just started following him, and he just seemed like a very kind man, like a very kind soul. Even his style, his style of interviewing and creating podcasts was very rich and very good, but at the same time, it had a human touch. It was not so much of let's get the content and let's get the let's get this player to talk for the first time after so many years. There was
Notoriety, clickbait. It wasn't
right.
necessarily about that. It's about the quality.
It was about the quality, and there was a reason why players like Freddie Adu, who never talked to a journalist about his story and his path before decided to talk to him, and like that. There's other stories that I read just yesterday about athletes who were going through a hard time and they were just not interested in talking to any media, but somehow they talked to Grant, and you can hear it in his podcast and everything he produced, his writing, that his writing was very good, very rich, very professional, but also he had a way of being with people that was just inviting, that allow other people to have the space to speak. So it's been, I was very, very saddened and surprised by it.
Yeah, I think if you haven't checked out some of his content, you definitely want to check out his podcast series of American Prodigy. That's the story of Freddie Adu. That for someone that grew up during that era and followed that story, and has memories of early MLS or the MLS blossoming during that area, making the attempts to blossom, that's definitely a cool story to check out. Just great audio storytelling. Another example is the podcast on the US's American Fiasco, which tells a story of the US men's team's campaign in France 1998, and how that went. And that is definitely interesting as well. I just had watched Good Rivals 2 nights ago. I finished it. It's a documentary series that he produced on Prime, and that tells the story of the US-Mexico rivalry, its origins, the Dos Acero, and how that was born. And it also ends on the theme of duo or multinationality players and that process, and interviewing players that have chosen, different teams, and even though they live in the US and they choose to play for Mexico, or they live in the US and of Mexican heritage and play for the US. So, it's content that's relatable to kind of what we're doing, in the sense of, reaching out to the diaspora, keeping that perspective from outside of the homeland. So definitely check out that documentary. Yeah, is definitely shocking to see that news. And that's literally all I can say about that. Is, it's just a reminder how life isn't guaranteed. So it sounds cliche, but the more you can enjoy the moment and enjoy those around you, the better you're going to be. Because consciousness is fleeting, life is fleeting, and you just got to try and do your best and enjoy it at any cost, and take care of yourself, stay healthy. So just wanted to close with that. Hopefully you're able to check some of this content out. Just a very admirable journalist that Grant Wall was within the realm of the US, who kind of broke down the sport for the casual fans, but there was that level, or that ingredient of kind of heightened intellectualism to it, so that it's beyond just for a casual beginner fan for the sport. So he was accessible to those new to the sport, but also kept you intrigued. If you're a seasoned fan, he's not bullshitting you, he's not kind of babying or oversimplifying things. And that's the content that I feel most were able to connect with throughout the years. So yes, what a great loss for the American soccer community and American soccer journalism family as well. And so take care of yourselves, everybody. We'll be back sometime soon, hopefully with good news and maybe a little more reflections on the end of the World Cup. But until then, you got a couple days off. You're going to be jonesing for some content. Definitely check out some of the stuff we mentioned. Hopefully you're able to satiate your urges for soccer content with the podcast. And thanks for listening to us. Do you want to say anything before we head on out?
No, that's it. Hopefully we'll try to record more often, and we'll talk about the World Cup and hopefully some good news about La Selecta. And there's a subject we haven't touched on yet, which is the U23s and the Central American Games coming up next summer. And that national team is going to feed the senior team as well. And I think there could be a very, very interesting group for that U23, including players that have already played with the senior team, who have that experience and are now going to go down to play U23. So looking forward to talking about that as well.
Yep. So we'll be linking up sometime soon and then letting y'all know about it. That way you can check out the next episode. In the meantime, enjoy the World Cup, enjoy your family, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks, guys.